My ungrateful kids never called in 5 years, then showed up to a reading, left with $1 each. When my son Brandon sneered, "Dad, you're pathetic clinging to us like this. We have our own lives now," as he grabbed the keys to the BMW I'd just finished paying off, I simply nodded and said, "I understand, son." By the next morning, I had changed every single financial account, canceled every credit card they had access to, and began documenting 5 years of their lies, theft, and abandonment. And that was just the beginning. For 30 years, I'd sacrificed everything for Brandon and Ashley. I paid for their college, their weddings, their house down payments, their cars, and even their children's daycare. When my wife Carol passed 3 years ago, they disappeared completely. No phone calls, no visits, just silence. They thought they were dealing with a lonely old man who'd roll over and die quietly. They were about to learn that 40 years as a forensic accountant had taught me exactly how to destroy someone's financial life, piece by piece, completely legally. Justice must be restored and arrogance punished. You won't believe what I did next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. My name is Thompson, but everyone calls me Hal. At 68, I thought I'd done everything right as a father. Looking back now, I realize I'd actually done everything wrong. When Brandon was born 28 years ago, followed by Ashley 3 years later, Carol and I made a promise. Our kids would never struggle like we did. I worked 16-hour days at my accounting firm, specializing in forensic work, tracking down fraud, embezzlement, and financial crimes. We gave them everything: piano lessons, soccer camps, brand new cars on their 16th birthdays, full college tuition at expensive private schools. When Brandon wanted a major in art history, I wrote the checks. When Ashley switched majors 4 times, costing us an extra 2 years of tuition, I never complained. After college, the support continued. Brandon needed help with his wedding, $25,000 for a destination ceremony in Hawaii. Ashley's starter home required a $40,000 down payment. Brandon's wife Stephanie wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, so I quietly paid their mortgage for 2 years while he found himself in various failed business ventures. I told myself this was love. This was being a good father. The first red flag should have been Brandon's attitude during Carol's cancer treatment. While I spent every day at the hospital, Brandon visited twice in 6 months. Ashley came once. They were too busy with their own lives. When Carol died, they showed up to the funeral in expensive clothes I'd unknowingly paid for, shed some tears for the cameras, then disappeared again. That's when the real exploitation began. Brandon started calling only when he needed money. Car repairs, credit card debt, Stephanie's shopping habits, always promising to pay me back. Ashley was smoother. She'd call every few months, chat sweetly about her kids, then casually mention some financial emergency. I kept detailed records of every loan, every payment. By the time of my wake-up call, I'd given them over $300,000 in the 5 years since Carol's death. Not once had they paid back a single penny. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the loneliness. I'd call Brandon every Sunday, only to get voicemail. When he did answer, he was always rushing off somewhere important. Ashley would promise to bring the grandkids for dinner, then cancel at the last minute. I spent Christmas alone for 3 years in a row. The breaking point came on what should have been Carol's 70th birthday. I'd planned a small memorial dinner at the house. I called both kids a week in advance, confirmed they were coming, even bought Ashley's favorite wine and ingredients for Brandon's childhood favorite meal. 6 o'clock came and went. 7 o'clock. 8 o'clock. At 8:30, my phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. "Sorry, Dad. Kids have the flu. Rain check." 10 minutes later, I saw her Instagram story. She was at a wine bar downtown, laughing with friends, kids nowhere in sight. That night, sitting alone at a table set for 4, something inside me finally broke. Not my heart, that had been cracking for years. My patience. I was done being their ATM. Done being invisible except when they needed something. They thought they could take everything and give nothing in return. They had no idea who they were really dealing with. The next morning, I opened my laptop and began reviewing every bank statement, every credit card bill, every financial transaction I'd made on my children's behalf since Carol's death. What I found made me sick. It wasn't just the $300,000 in direct loans. Hidden in the details were dozens of smaller transactions I'd forgotten about. Brandon's gas car that I still paid monthly $1,200 in charges last month alone. Ashley's phone plan that somehow included 4 additional lines. Streaming services, insurance payments, even their grocery bills that somehow got charged to my credit card. But the real shock came when I started cross-referencing their social media with their sob stories. In March, Brandon had called crying about being unable to afford groceries for his kids. I'd immediately transferred $500. That same week, his Instagram showed him at an expensive steakhouse. The bill visible in the background showed over $200 for dinner. Ashley had texted in April about not being able to pay for her daughter's dance classes. I sent $800 immediately. 3 days later, she posted photos from a spa weekend with her girlfriends. I sat in my home office, surrounded by printed bank statements and screenshots, feeling like a forensic accountant again. Except this time, I was investigating my own children's fraud. The pattern was clear and systematic. They monitored my social media to know when I was feeling lonely. They timed their requests perfectly, always when I was most vulnerable. They never called just to talk anymore. Every conversation in the past 2 years had ended with a request for money. I pulled up my phone logs. In the past year, I called Brandon 47 times. He called me back 6 times, and 4 of those were for money. Ashley was worse. 63 calls from me, 3 return calls, all asking for financial help. Then I found a recording. My phone had accidentally called Brandon and stayed connected for almost 20 minutes without me realizing. The voicemail system had saved it as a message. I almost deleted it, but something made me listen. I swear, the old man gets more pathetic every day. Brandon's voice came through clearly. He was talking to Stephanie. He called again yesterday, probably sitting alone, feeling sorry for himself. "Did you answer?" Stephanie replied. "Hell no, but he'll probably send more money soon. He always does when he gets desperate for attention." It's honestly kind of sad how easy it is. My hand started shaking. "The best part is he never asks for it back," Brandon continued. "Just keeps a running tab like we're ever going to pay him. When he dies, all his money comes to us anyway. Might as well enjoy it now." They laughed together. Actually laughed about manipulating their grieving father. "Ashley's got the right idea, though," Brandon said. "She told me she's been saving every penny he gives her. Has like 50 grand in a separate account now. Says when the old man dies, she'll use his inheritance money to buy that lake house she wants." I sat in stunned silence. While I've been skipping my own medications to cut costs, Ashley had been hoarding the money I thought she desperately needed. By the time the recording ended, I wasn't angry anymore. I was something much more dangerous. I was focused. For the first time in 5 years, I remembered exactly who I was before I became a grieving father being manipulated by his own children. I was Harold Thompson, forensic accountant. I'd spent 40 years destroying people who thought they were smarter than the system. My own children had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. I've investigated hundreds of financial crimes in my career, but none had ever felt personal. This was different. This was my life's work turned against the people who destroyed my faith in family. But emotions make bad investigators. So I did what I trained myself to do for 4 decades. I got methodical. First, I created a secure folder on my computer labeled Thompson Investigation. Inside, I began building a case file like I would for any fraud investigation. I pulled 5 years of bank records and credit card statements. Every transaction over $50 got its own spreadsheet entry with date, amount, recipient, and stated purpose. When Brandon said he needed money for car repairs, I tracked down the actual mechanic's receipt. The real cost? Half of what he'd asked me for. Ashley had been even more creative. She'd claimed her daughter needed special tutoring that cost $300 a month. I called the tutoring center directly. They'd never heard of Ashley's daughter. I created fake social media accounts to follow their friends and see posts they'd hidden from me. What I found was 5 years of documentation proving every lie they'd told. The weekend Brandon claimed he couldn't afford groceries. He posted photos from a concert that cost $200 per ticket. The month Ashley said she couldn't pay rent, she'd shared pictures from a shopping trip where she bought $400 worth of designer shoes. I cross-referenced every financial request with their social media activity. The pattern was perfect. They'd spend money on luxuries, max out their credit cards, then call me with carefully crafted emergencies. The breakthrough came when I decided to test their system. I posted on Facebook about feeling lonely and missing Carol. Within 6 hours, both kids had called with sudden financial emergencies. Brandon needed money for Stephanie's medical bills. She'd supposedly hurt her back and needed physical therapy. Ashley's daughter had allegedly been accepted into an expensive summer program. Instead of transferring money immediately, I told each of them I needed a few days to move fund around. Could they send me the bills so I could pay directly? The panic in their voices was immediate and obvious. Both stories fell apart within minutes of basic questions. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I opened a new bank account at a different institution. I transferred enough money to cover my living expenses for 2 years. Then I did something I'd never done in 40 years of marriage and parenthood. I stopped being available. For the first time in 5 years, I made them wait, made them wonder, made them realize that their reliable source of money wasn't quite so reliable anymore. By the end of 2 weeks, I had everything I needed. Not just financial records and documented lies, but a complete understanding of how they operated. I understood their patterns, their pressure points, their assumptions about my weaknesses. For 5 years, I've been playing by their rules. Now it was time to play by my rules. Sunday morning, I sat in my office and did what I'd done hundreds of times before for corporate clients. I built a comprehensive strategy to expose fraud and recover damages. The only difference was this time, the fraudsters were my own children. I started making phone calls. My first call was to Mitchell Pratt, a lawyer who'd worked with me on several corporate fraud cases. Mitchell, I need to discuss a potential case. Family financial fraud. Approximately $300,000 with documented evidence. Jesus, how? Who's the victim? Me. And the perpetrators are my children. My second call was to George Hamilton, my estate attorney. George, I need to completely revise my estate documents. How quickly can we do that? Complete overhaul with trusts and conditions. Probably 3 weeks. I want everything ironclad. No possible way to contest or challenge anything. My third call was to my financial advisor, Patricia Wells. Patricia, I need to restructure my accounts. I want to set up irrevocable trusts for my grandchildren's education, but I want specific controls on how those funds can be accessed. By the end of that week, I had built a comprehensive plan that would accomplish 3 goals: expose my children's fraud, protect my assets from future manipulation, and ensure my money would actually help people who deserved it. The beauty of my plan was its simplicity. I wasn't going to confront them directly. I was simply going to stop enabling their fraud and start protecting my assets. Step 1 was already in motion. I'd move my liquid funds to accounts they couldn't access. Step 2 was implementing new security measures. I contacted my bank and credit card companies to add verbal passwords to all accounts. I also removed both children as authorized contacts. Step 3 was the estate restructuring. Instead of leaving everything to Brandon and Ashley, I was creating specific trusts with ironclad conditions. Their children's educational funds would be protected from parental manipulation. The remaining money would go to charitable causes. But here's what they didn't know was coming. I was leaving each of them exactly $1, the legal minimum to prove they hadn't been forgotten accidentally. The will would specifically state that this amount reflected their demonstrated appreciation for family financial support during their father's lifetime. Step 4 was going to be the most satisfying. I was going to let them expose themselves. In exactly 1 month, I would inform both children that I was updating my will and wanted to have a family meeting to discuss my estate plans. Their reactions would tell me everything I needed to know about their true priorities. What they didn't know was that 40 years of investigating fraud had taught me to hope for the best while preparing for the worst. And I was very, very prepared for the worst. 3 weeks later, I was ready to begin Operation Reality Check. I'd spent those weeks putting all the legal and financial pieces in place. My new will was signed and notarized. The educational trusts for my grandchildren were established and funded. The charitable foundation in Carol's memory was operational. On a Tuesday morning in October, I sent identical text messages. Hi, I've been doing some estate planning and would like to have a family meeting to discuss my will and financial arrangements. Are you available this weekend? Love, Dad. The responses came faster than they'd replied to any message from me in years. Brandon called within 30 minutes. Dad, yes, absolutely. We can definitely meet this weekend. Ashley texted back in 20 minutes. Of course, Dad. Saturday work? Saturday arrived with perfect fall weather. Both families showed up with their children in tow. For about 10 minutes, it felt like a normal family gathering, but I could sense the underlying tension. Well, I finally said, settling into Carol's old chair, I suppose we should talk about why I asked you all here. The room went quiet except for children's laughter from outside. I've been working with my attorney and financial advisor to completely restructure my estate. New will, new trusts, new charitable giving strategies. Both Brandon and Ashley were leaning forward, paying attention in a way they hadn't done in years. I'm more concerned about making sure other people are taken care of. That's why I've decided to do most of my giving while I'm still alive, so I can see the impact. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. First, I've established educational trust funds for each of the grandchildren. Fully funded, managed by an independent trustee, money goes directly to schools only. Relief flickered across their faces. I've also started a scholarship foundation in your mother's memory. And of course, there are various other charitable causes that Carol and I always supported. Brandon cleared his throat. Dad, this all sounds great, but what about family? Oh, don't worry about me. I have more than enough set aside. In fact, I've realized I was probably being too generous for too many years, giving money away so freely that I never really thought about whether it was helping anyone or just making them dependent. The silence was deafening. That's why I've decided to change my approach going forward. No more loans or gifts or bailouts. Everyone needs to learn to manage their own financial lives. Brandon found his voice. Dad, that seems extreme. Families should help each other during emergencies. Real emergencies, absolutely. But I've learned to be more careful about what constitutes a real emergency versus just poor planning. The truth is, I realized I was lonely after your mother died, and I was giving money away partially because it made me feel needed. But that's not healthy for anyone. Ashley had tears in her eyes. Dad, we love you for who you are, not for what you can give us. I hope that's true, I said quietly. I guess we'll find out, won't we? The meeting ended shortly after. Both families made excuses about getting the kids home, though it was barely 4 o'clock. As I watched them drive away, I felt sad but not surprised. Not once had anyone asked about my health, my loneliness, or my emotional needs. Every question had been about money and inheritance. I had a feeling I wouldn't have to wait long for their true colors to show. By Monday morning, my phone was ringing constantly. Brandon called 6 times before noon. Ashley sent 12 text messages, each one longer and more emotional than the last. But the real revelation came Tuesday evening when my neighbor Paul knocked on my door. Al, Ashley was at my house this afternoon asking some pretty personal questions about you. She said she was worried about your mental health, that you've been acting strangely. My blood went cold. What did you tell her? My blood went cold. What did you tell her? I told her you seemed sharper than ever. But how? She seemed disappointed by that answer. Then she started asking if we knew anything about your finances. It felt like she was trying to build some kind of case that you weren't competent to manage your own affairs. After Paul left, I sat in my kitchen feeling sick. My own daughter was trying to have me declared mentally incompetent so she could gain control of my finances. I called Mitchell Pratt first thing Wednesday morning. Mitchell, I need to know about conservatorship and mental competency challenges. Christ, how? Are you worried about your kids trying something? I'm certain they're trying something. That afternoon, I made appointments with my doctor and a geriatric specialist for comprehensive evaluations. I also decided it was time to take the offensive. I started by calling my brother Jim in California and walking him through everything. Al, none of this is shocking to me, Jim said. Carol and I talked about this years ago. She was worried that you were spoiling the kids, that they were becoming too dependent on you financially. Over the next week, I began carefully telling the truth to people who mattered. Not gossiping, but simply sharing facts with family members and close friends. The response was overwhelming and validating. Carol's sister Nancy wasn't surprised. I've been watching those kids take advantage of you for years. My oldest friend, Tom, was furious. I always wondered why they never seemed to visit or call. But the most important call I made was to my financial advisor, Patricia. Patricia, I need you to document every interaction you've had with Brandon and Ashley over the years. What Patricia told me made my stomach turn. For 3 years, both of my children had been calling her regularly, trying to get information about my investment accounts. Just last month, Patricia said, Ashley called asking if I thought you were making sound financial decisions and whether I had concerns about your mental capacity. What did you tell her? I told her that you were one of the most financially sophisticated clients I've ever worked with. How did she respond? She seemed disappointed. By Friday, I had a complete picture. They've been systematically contacting my doctor, my financial advisor, my attorney, and even my neighbors try to build a case that I was mentally declining. What they didn't realize was that their efforts had accomplished the exact opposite. Every professional they'd contacted was now aware of their true motivations and was prepared to testify to my complete mental competence. They'd wanted to destroy my reputation to get control of my money. Instead, they destroyed their own reputations while proving that every decision I'd made about changing my estate plan had been perfectly justified. On a cold November morning, I sat in Mitchell Pratt's office reviewing the documents that would change everything. Al, are you absolutely certain about this approach? Mitchell asked. Once we file these documents, there's no going back quietly. The first document was a formal demand for repayment of all loans and unauthorized charges over the past 5 years. Total amount, $347,892.63. This gives them 30 days to respond with a payment plan or face collection proceedings, Mitchell explained. The second set of documents formally notified them that all access to any of my accounts had been permanently revoked. But the third document was the one I was most proud of. This is a formal notice that your inheritance has been changed due to your demonstrated lack of financial responsibility and respect for family relationships. Each beneficiary will receive the legal minimum of $1. How binding is this? I asked. Ironclad. We've documented every reason for the change. No judge would overturn this. The following week, Brandon and Ashley received their formal legal notices. Brandon called within hours, screaming so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Dad, what the hell is this? You can't demand that we pay back money you gave us as gifts. They weren't gifts, Brandon. They were loans. I have documentation of every promise you made to pay the money back. This is insane. We're family. Watch me. Ashley took a different approach. She showed up at my house with tears streaming down her face. Dad, please, we need to talk about this. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. Ashley, there's no misunderstanding. You and your brother have been systematically stealing from me for 5 years. Now you're trying to have me declared mentally incompetent. Those aren't misunderstandings. Those are crimes. We were never trying to steal from you. You told me you needed money for groceries while posting pictures from expensive restaurants. Ashley's composure cracked. We have bills, Dad. We have responsibilities. Help means temporarily assisting someone while they solve their problems. What you wanted was a permanent ATM. And the inheritance thing, Dad, we're your children. We should inherit your money. Why? The question seemed to surprise her. What do you mean, why? Why should you inherit my money? What have you done to earn it? When was the last time either of you called me just to see how I was doing? Ashley couldn't answer. Your children will inherit money for their education. Charities will inherit money because they actually help people. You and Brandon will inherit $1 each because that's exactly what your behavior toward your father has been worth. After Ashley left, I poured myself a glass of wine and felt something I hadn't felt in 5 years, peace. For the first time since my wife died, I wasn't worried about money disappearing from my accounts. I wasn't dreading phone calls from my children. That weekend, I called my brother Jim and invited myself to California for Thanksgiving. Jim, I tried to work things out for 5 years. I gave them everything I had and got nothing back except manipulation and lies. Now I'm going to spend my remaining years with people who actually care about me as a person, not as a bank account. As I booked my flight to San Diego, I realized that for the first time since Carol's death, I was actually looking forward to a holiday. I was 78 years old, and I was finally free. The call came 3 days before I was scheduled to fly to California. Dad, we need to meet. All of us together. Brandon's voice was resigned. Against my better judgment, I agreed. They arrived separately on Saturday afternoon. Ashley came first, without Derek or the kids. Brandon followed 10 minutes later, also alone. Dad, Ashley began, we've been talking, and we realized we made some mistakes. We know we relied on you too much financially, Brandon added, and maybe we didn't appreciate everything you did for us. I waited for more, but that seemed to be the extent of their confession. Is that all? I asked finally. I stood up and walked to my desk, returning with a folder. Let me read you something, I said. March 15th, 2022. Brandon calls crying, says Stephanie is in the hospital and they need $500 immediately. I transfer the money within an hour. I flip the page. March 18th, 2022. Stephanie posts on Instagram about her amazing spa weekend with the girls. I have dozens of these. This isn't about relying on me too much. This is about systematic fraud. You didn't just take my money, you lied to me to get it. But the money wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was that you disappeared from my life except when you needed something from me. After your mother died, I was completely alone for the first time in 40 years. Instead, you treated me like an ATM with emotions that needed to be manipulated. Ashley leaned forward. We want to make this right. We want to work out a payment plan for the money, and we want to rebuild our relationship. What kind of payment plan? I asked. Well, Ashley said, we thought maybe we could pay back some of the money over time, and in exchange, you could change your will back to include us. The hope died instantly. You want to trade paying back money you stole for getting back into my will? We just thought if we were going to be family again, we should all be making an effort. So your effort is paying back some of the money you stole, and my effort is giving you access to my inheritance again. I stood up and walked to the window. Do you know what I hoped for when you asked for this meeting? I hoped you would say you were sorry for lying to me. Sorry for stealing from me. Sorry for abandoning me when I needed my family most. I turned back to face them. Instead, you're trying to negotiate a deal. Even now, even in this conversation that's supposed to be about fixing our relationship, you're still trying to manipulate me for money. Brandon stood up, his face flushed with anger. Fine, dad. You want to cut your own children out of your will over money? But don't expect us to come crawling back when you're old and sick and need someone to take care of you. Brandon, I said quietly, you haven't taken care of me for the past 5 years when I was grieving and lonely. What makes you think I'd expect you to take care of me in the future? Ashley was crying harder now. Dad, we love you. We do. Ashley, love isn't just a feeling. It's actions. It's showing up for someone when they need you, not just when you need something from them. I walked to the front door and opened it. This conversation is over. The legal demands for repayment stand. The changes are final. And our relationship is exactly what you made it over the past 5 years. Nothing. Brandon stormed past me without another word. Ashley paused at the door. Dad, someday you're going to regret this. Ashley, I said, the only thing I regret is that it took me 5 years to stop enabling you. After they left, I sat in my quiet house and felt something I hadn't expected, relief. 4 or 5 years, I've been hoping my children would remember how to love their father. Today, I'd finally accepted that they never would. But that was okay. I was 78 years old, and I was finally free to spend my remaining years with people who actually cared about me. 6 months later, I was sitting on Jim's back patio in San Diego, watching my nephew's kids play in the pool while I finished my morning coffee. My life looked completely different now. I'd sold my house in Ohio and moved to a smaller place near Jim's family. My grandnephews had adopted me as their honorary grandfather, and I was teaching 12-year-old Tommy about investing with a mock portfolio we managed together. The scholarship fund in Carol's memory had already helped 15 students whose parents died young. I got letters from recipients every few months sharing their progress and thanking me for believing in them. Most surprisingly, I'd found a new career. My presentations on family financial fraud had led to consulting work with law enforcement and elder abuse prevention organizations. I was traveling around the country teaching other professionals how to recognize and investigate cases like mine. The hardest thing for victims to understand, I tell audiences, is that they're not dealing with normal family relationship problems. They're dealing with criminals who happen to be related to them. Last month, I got a call from Patricia, my financial advisor back in Ohio. Al, I thought you should know. Ashley called asking if I knew your new address. She said she wanted to send you a birthday card. Did you give it to her? Of course not. But she also asked whether I thought you'd calm down about the inheritance situation. Even 6 months later, Ashley was still focused on money. But the most satisfying call came from my old neighbor Paul. Al, Brandon showed up at our door last week asking if we'd heard from you. Said he was concerned about your well-being and wanted to know where you'd moved. What did you tell him? I told him that you were doing great, that you seemed happier than you'd been in years, and that if he was really concerned about your well-being, maybe you should have thought about that before trying to steal your retirement money. This morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. Grandpa Hal, our stock pick is up 8% this week. Can we buy more shares with our pretend money? I smiled and texted back. Let's talk about it after school. Remember, we never invest more than we can afford to lose. Tommy's response came immediately. I know. You taught me that. Love you, Grandpa Hal. Real love, I'd learned, doesn't come with conditions or payment plans. It doesn't disappear when the money runs out. It doesn't require manipulation or lies. It just shows up consistently with no agenda other than caring about someone's happiness. For 40 years, I confused enabling with love, financial generosity with emotional connection, being needed with being valued. Now at 78, surrounded by people who loved me for who I was rather than what I could give them, I finally understood the difference. Brandon and Ashley had taught me the most valuable lesson of my life, though not the one they'd intended. They taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is stop letting them take advantage of you. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who only see you as an ATM with emotions. I finished my coffee, kissed my sister-in-law on the cheek, and headed inside to start another day of my new life. A life where every relationship was based on mutual respect, genuine affection, and the simple pleasure of spending time together. It had taken me 78 years to learn what family really meant, but I learned it just in time.
If this story got you thinking, go ahead and hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories that hit deep, and tap the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. And hey, if you know someone who needs to hear this one, share it with them. Thanks for watching.